single Orthodox Christian living on the banks of the Anchor River in North America's farthest west highway point. So tonight I'm going to do some reading for us tonight as I usually do. Guess I'll just put this right here. How's that go? All right. First reading that I have for us tonight is called Stone. If you want to support my small farm or small channel, it's www.paypal.me/Pike A. Stone by Pyotr Davidov. Sava came home from the music room late, but businesslike to the point of impossibility. Not allowing any complaints he met, he said, "A service dog." "Downright service?" I asked. "Maybe an official one?" "Maybe it's official, but the service for sure. She lives in the courtyard of the merchant's house. She went for a walk and we started talking." The cat Cactus soared to the top of the shelf with indignation and jealousy and lay down at the explanatory Typicon by Skabalanovich. His eyes bulged, smiling feignedly. What was the conversation about? About the fate of the service? No, about puppies. She, you see, teaches puppies life so that they don't get bored. When necessary, he will push or even bite. When necessary, he will protect. In some way, she will remind me of you, well, or adults in general. Thank you, dear friend. It turns out that Dad is a dog and even a service dog. Not exactly. Do you remember how you and the other adults in the church taught us politeness? Well, when you were allowed to go to confession as a child, where does he get such expressions? You need to thank him, bow slightly and not to climb, as in your right without queuing. Do not push the adults aside. Father Sergius also spoke about this, strictly so. Clear. Some have learned, some have not. The service dog brings up her puppies to behave as they should. As it should be, Sava. Yes, as it should be, otherwise, he said, they would go berserk. So we discussed with her how best to educate. We sighed and I went home. I gave her a sandwich and went. And she is for puppies, it turns out. Friends, of course, rejoiced and laughed when they heard the next revelations of the guys and animals. We love such short gatherings in the kitchen with funny stories. What we don't like are really arrogant, simply put. The representatives of the younger generation behave boorishly. Therefore, the strictness of the abbot who called on adults to instill in children the rules of good manners from childhood could not be but welcomed. Otherwise, it's really horrible. Our complaints about young people are sometimes perceived by us, already adult uncles, beaten by life with humor. We say we would like a couple of benches in the yard, dominoes, an accordion, and a squad of grandmothers in headscarves, so that they sit and tell how bad young people are today, in between dancing and resuscitation. But sometimes there's no laughing matter at all. We see with our own eyes what is happening in today's schools when disenfranchised teachers cannot do anything about the young impotent who has lost their shoes. We travel in trolley buses, and we know what happens when such children under 2 meters hear a request to give way to a woman. We walk around the city and hear boys and girls talking to each other. However, talking is when there are words. Here there are some kind of womb hiccups with rising intonation and constant wild, demonstratively loud, foul language. To the best of our ability, of course, we fight when we are faced with such lawlessness. One friend, having arrived from the front, decided to walk around his quiet native places along the embankment and, faced with an aggressive pack that insulted the women, forced the whole company to clean up, to remove candy wrappers and cigarette butts and bottles. Some stiff individuals, suddenly remembering their rights and dignity, crawled around the monument for a long time and wiped their spittle with their bellies. They freed the transport from unbridled teenagers despite the threats. They cleared the yards of aggressive lovers of Lesginka, and the conscience is calm in this case. But one day, one of the interlocutors, sighing, said, "It seems to me that those ragged puppies that we see today are a hello to us from our own youth. By the way, that's why I try to behave calmly when I am insulted personally. But when someone else is threatened in front of me, well, You know. We know, and that's why we listened, he continued. He who is not young is sinless, I think they say. I remember one young bastard whom, if I met today, I would be so beaten that I would not be able to sit down for months. A grandmother from the village, Novoselka, came to their yard. I got acquainted with all the neighbors, made friends, easily went to visit, and invited me to my place, as is customary in the village. She calmly borrowed food if someone asked. She also calmly asked herself. I remember once one of the neighbors was celebrating a wedding, so this granny spread a huge rug in front of the entrance door and met a couple with a huge pie in her hands. A pie, a towel, greetings, songs, ditties, an accordion. All this was in the city courtyard. Many were jealous, they say. Time passed, the grandmother hunched over. She was wandering around the yard, muttering something under her breath, and a flock of yard teenagers runs by. Maybe they played Cossack robbers. Maybe they just played Indians with cowboys. I don't know. Either way, they pushed the neighbor and suddenly dared to shout, "Let's bicker, the quarreling is getting louder." And the flock went somewhere on their own business. Maybe they were bored and swearing. And one bastard, the one we are talking about, after moving about 30 meters, takes a stone and throws it at this grandmother. He hit her right on her hunched back. Mean, shameful. Even the most frostbitten of the company looked at him in such a way that their eyes rolled. So if I met this puppy today in 40 years, I would have smeared it on the wall. One thing stands in the way. That puppy is me. Stunned, we were silent. Everyone remembered their own abominations. Don't remember it here, and everyone came to the conclusion. If you had met yourself then, at that time when you were doing these abominations, you would have not spared you. Therefore, sometimes it seems to me that today's youth is an echo of our own sins, says the interlocutor. And it's one thing if I'm protecting someone else from humiliation, but it's quite another thing if some pimply overgrown person is rude to me personally. I'll know what kind of stone it is for me. This does not mean that I approve of his rudeness, of course. He still has to be educated. But the awareness of one's own, to put it mildly, imperfection. I have not yet begun to retell our man's conversation to Sava. I'll tell you a little later. In addition, he has gone to the music room again, and I'm sure that the second sandwich from the food box will go to the service dog from the merchant's house and her puppies, so that they do not get bored. With obvious disapproval of the impudent muzzle from the upper bookshelf, which made a nest next to Skalabanovич's explanatory Typicon. Pyotr Davidov, March 19th, 2026. That one was a little hard to understand in translation, I think. But the gist of it is, there's so many people behaving so rude. And if I was behaving rude like that back then, which I did, I wish someone wouldn't have spared the belt and would have gave my ass a good and stout whipping. And I think that's what's missing in society today. No one's being disciplined. Kids are being allowed to act like animals. Before I came on tonight, I was looking at some Facebook posts, and I see that there was young men beating women. That seems to be becoming a thing. Boy, if my grandfather even heard me swear in front of a woman, he would have beat me bloody, and that's not an understatement. There's something wrong with parents today. There's something wrong with our society. If men are being allowed to beat women in the streets, in high schools and middle schools, then maybe even the principals and the school teachers need a good hiding. There's something wrong and sick in our society, and we can't allow it. Even if we did bad things when we were kids, that's no excuse to allow bad things to happen now. Our American society is really trash. And when you go to a foreign country, especially to Europe, you see that all those problems don't exist that we allow here. We don't allow grown adults to poop or pee on the street. They don't allow grown adults, rather, to poop or pee on the street. They don't allow people to attack people on subways. They don't allow the subways and metro systems to be filled with scourge and filth, with robbers and thieves and bandits and hoodlums. Those things don't happen there because they don't allow it, because the men are still men. They're not confused. See so much confusion here in our society. And I think that the only way to fix it is we have to be able to speak out, to say something about what's going on that's wrong, to tell people when they're letting their kids act like train wrecks, to shape up unreservedly. Sometimes people need correction. We need correction. God corrects us. We need to be able to self-police each other, to help our brothers and sisters in kindness, but also to be stern. Some things should never be allowed, and there's too much of it going on. I'm going to do some more readings for us. The next reading will be Blessed Rista by Borislav Stankiewicz. From the collection of short stories entitled God's People. Howdy, everybody. Thanks for joining. One of the most beloved collections of stories by their famous compatriot, the writer Borislav Stankiewicz, from 1876 to 1927, is called God's People. Printed from life, they speak not only about the wretched or foolish Serbian villages and small towns, about their hard life, trials, joys, and humiliations. These notes also tell how we seemingly strong and healthy people treat the weak. The writer wonders what our health is and whether we are really healthy, at least spiritually. Judging by the realities he described then 100 years ago, most people know how to love and to protect the weak, in word and deed and often in prayer. To offend the poor is a sin, to mock the weak is a disgrace. It is unthinkable to refuse help to someone who is in really need. Today, I think it would be useful to get acquainted with the good stories of Stankiewicz, because active compassion and prayer should be inherent not only in Serbia, and even then as a sign of bygone days. All wrinkled, his feet are small, always barefoot. He walks slowly, carefully on tiptoe, looking for a place to stop. The face is square without a beard and mustache, as if it were a child. Only by his long nose, which seems to connect with his clenched jaws, it is clear that he is already many years old. He greets everyone he meets as his best friend, smiles and nods. Wrapping his long arms around his bare elbows as if hugging him, he holds a piece of bread, all sorts of rags, old clothes that he found on the way. It will come in handy. Holy trousers up to the knees and old torn tunic. That's all the attire. But on the other hand, his head on a thin, long neck is always decorated with flowers or greenery. He is happiest when someone gives him or finds an old hat or fez somewhere in the pile of garbage. He will immediately decorate the new thing, if not with flowers, then with twigs or just fragrant grass. He will decorate it so much that because of the greenery, neither the hat itself nor the face is visible. And he will start jumping for joy, showing everyone he meets what a wonderful new thing he has. He shouts joyfully, oh, just look how beautiful Rista is. Everyone laughing will answer, exactly, you are beautiful, Rista, and let's dance again. And I'll show you a coin. Oh, Rista exclaims, and immediately leaning on one leg, throwing the other aside, he begins to dance, like a real dancer, leaning on his hips, looking with pleasure at his thin, withered bare feet, stands on tiptoe, then on his heels, choosing the right beat for himself, and sings, that's it, and this one, and like this, and like this. Everyone, for the most part, of course, children, but also old people from the pub or kafarna, residents of the nearest houses, gathered around him and giving him little alms, demanded new dances and songs. And he, happy to the skies with a blissful smile, seeing that they like his next performance, dances faster and faster, moves his legs more and more rapidly. His steps become smaller, his body turns more and more graceful. Forgetting himself from happiness, as if intoxicated by the smell of flowers and grass on his hat. He dances for himself, he forgets to take the alms, and he leaves dancing. The aromas and dance have completely turned his head. He leaves, not paying any attention to the pieces of bread and coins falling from his bosom, which his fellow villagers have gave him. Like this, and that's it. And this one comes to our street from the main square, where he continues his outlandish performance. And there on the square, new spectators gather. Cheerful and happy people laugh, attracted by his appearance. Someone looks sadly. Borislav Stankovic, translated from Serbian by Peter Davidov, February 4th, 2026. Kindness. People need kindness. It's really so critically important that we try to teach people to not do wrong. We have to teach them a better way. I know that it's not always easy. That's very difficult sometimes. Even people we think of that are our friends so often turn out to stab us in the back and to do terrible things. But we need to correct them, even if they're angry with us. Sometimes we need to correct our friends and just not care if they're our friends anymore or not. Pride is what casts Satan from heaven. And when we see people abusing others, we should stand up and do something about it. Our society wants to think, oh, it's not our place. Let the authorities handle it. Well, we are the authorities of our society. And nobody can tell us that we aren't. God has given us life. This whole planet, all of creation, is a gift to us from God. It isn't a gift to the authorities. It's not a gift to the government. But it's a gift to each and every one of us, God's children. And we have to help to protect our brothers and sisters. So just a couple short readings for us tonight. I might be on later with some more readings. We'll see. I've been thinking of what I want to do next. I just got back from church a little while ago. So I'll come up with something, and thank you for joining me. I love you all, my brothers and sisters. God loves you so much more than I can ever express. So God willing, I'll see you again on the next one. God bless.